But we're here, and I want to welcome you to NWA Go's National Train Day celebration and our monthly meeting. I have a couple of things to go over before we get into trains. Uh, One is we are getting our income taxes filed for last year, which time to do. I'm very happy about that. I'd kind of stressed on it. Now we make less than 50,000 a year in terms of donations and other revenue, but the IRS still needs to hear from us, kind of check up, see how we're doing. If we don't do this for 3 years in a row, that is, don't file taxes, we can lose our IRS tax exempt status. We're going to need a paperwork from them after we file the taxes to give to the Arkansas Secretary of State. I believe once we do all that, we will be able to give you the ability to make gifts to NWA Go, and they'll be tax free. We'll be able to send you a statement after this, after in January or at the end of January, and you can claim that on your taxes. The other thing is update on Make the Ask. Make the Ask is our goal this year. We're just getting people out in our group to tell people what we want. That includes legislators and officials at every level of government. It's very important. As you know, I've already gone to the Washington County Quorum Court, and let me plug this in. Okay. Quorum Court to ask them for funding for mass transit. And I've also gone to Washington, spoke to several congressional staff people who are very interested to find out folks back home cared about this. And we certainly do. I've also talked to the Fayetteville City Council's Transportation Committee and moved the ball down the field, I feel. And in all these contacts, I've made, or attempts, I've made contacts with some people I can continue to have a relationship with and talk to them about what our goals are and what we want. And so we'll just keep plugging along. Now, we were going to go talk to the state legislature's transportation committee. I haven't heard back from them. They were in the general session and they had a certain number of things they wanted to deal with in general session. That's over in the middle of April, but I think they're coming back for an interim session. And I was told by my contact in the legislature that that is what we have a chance then during the interim session to go and talk to them. I have 3 other people from NWA Go who want to talk to folks in the legislature. And we're going to split up topics and all that, but I haven't heard back. Here's the thing, unfortunately, and keep in mind, part of Make the Ask is to go out and make the attempt, find out what happens when you make the attempt, and we'll come back, we'll discuss it during general meetings, and then we will figure out what to do next time, what's going to be different. And so we unfortunately have a trend towards authoritarianism, certain quarters of our political landscape and certain levels of government. And if you're not going to get up there and say what they want you to say, they aren't interested in talking to you. And it's just that plain. And we're going to find out if the Arkansas State Legislature is like that. Some of you suspect it is. Some of you have some hope. We'll find out. We'll try it and find out. Here's the thing. Keep in mind, there are some groups who have some very unpopular positions, and they have worked for decades to get their agenda on the docket. And so we're seeing some things that are very unpopular that are passing legislatures, and that's just the dogged work of certain groups. We actually are there's a lot of popularity to our ideas. And so if we work together, I think we'll get our results much quicker. There are things we'll talk about, and we'll have another live stream event and talk about how to achieve our political objectives. Um, but for now, we're just trying, and we're going to report on what happens when we do. So we've had some good results so far, and I think um, we just keep building on that, and we will see what we want here in a few years. I've moved the ball down the court for getting light rail. Another future live stream will be, and I'll have some photographs and everything of light rail. Um, the light rail could either be an in track or in road tracks that have street trams or trolleys. It can also be grade separated. Grade separated means that the tracks for the light rail are appear completely separate from the road. So there's no intersection with roads, streets, highways, or anything. And we'll do a one on that, and I'll try to get better at this live stream stuff. And I've learned a lot today about it, and just trying to do it again. So we are going to do that at a future video. Today, I want to talk about passenger rail. And if you have any comments, I've enabled comments. I don't see any comments. I'd have to go to YouTube to do that. So I don't have my YouTube up. Let me get my YouTube up and see if I can enter a comment and have it show up here on my professional studio that I'm using called Restream. And it's taking a minute to connect. Here we are, live. And there I am. Okay. And we have chat up. No one. Let me no one's chatting. Anyway, I will I did get a let me turn the YouTube off or get out of it. Where is that? Restream. Whoops. Okay, sorry about that. I do see that chat works. On YouTube, we can also do live streaming on LinkedIn. I do have some videos, some things I posted on LinkedIn about NWA Go, and also on Facebook. So the next time we do a live stream, we'll do live streams at least on Facebook and YouTube, maybe LinkedIn also. Twitter has suddenly made it very hard to do, so we'll just have to we'll just see what happens with that. I'll try it. But anyway, with the issue around passenger rail, I think there are a lot of problems with Amtrak. The more I look at it, we have groups like the Railroad Passengers Association that seem like they want to reform Amtrak and make it work better. There's some things we can do for that, but let's talk about what's wrong with Amtrak. First of all, Amtrak has one train that goes through Arkansas, and I'm counting one train as one going north and one going south. Okay. It doesn't do much good to go one way and not be able to go the other. So that is one frequency of one route is one. And it goes through in the middle of the night. Hardly anybody in Arkansas uses Amtrak. It certainly doesn't go through what will soon be our most populous region, which is NWA. and I'm using NWA as the name for the Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers metropolitan area in Arkansas and Missouri, which is, I think, the federal government's designation for us. So we'll just say it's NWA. I believe that's going to become a name for our entire region, anyhow. And said that before, but oh, here comes Tony Studios. Oh man, I thought I missed it. No, Tony, you're here. I'm glad you are. So make your presentation now. If you'll just give me a couple of minutes to get through this, and if you have some questions, we'll answer it. I had a couple of technical issues getting the live stream started this time, but I know now what to do. I'm still learning curve. But anyway, that's the problem with Amtrak. It's not frequent enough, severely underfunded, and it's not convenient. And also, it's slowed down by the freight railroad companies. And let me stop here and give you a piece of history in case you don't know it. But under the fair use doctrine, if you get money from the state governments or the federal government to build a piece of infrastructure, it has to be available for everyone to use. And that was the justification for freight railroads running passenger service. And of course, before the national highway system and people buying cars, passenger rail could be profitable and it could make money. But in the 1950s, the Eisenhower administration made a policy decision to build a national highway system. Dwight D. Eisenhower had been our supreme Allied commander in Europe during World War II. He had seen the German Autobahn, which was a freeway, and he liked being able to move lots of Army personnel and materiel over that very quickly. And so he wanted to replicate that in the United States. That's how we got the interstate highway system that we have now. So with the decrease in passenger fares, freight rail companies want to get out of that. However, under fair use doctrine, as we've established, they still had to do it. Their out was Amtrak. So with Amtrak, the freight rail companies agreed to host any Amtrak routes that were going to come through, and they would move freight rail trains over and allow the Amtrak trains to come through. The problem with that is that after Amtrak was established and started going, freight rail, well, it was uneven. There were some freight rail companies like Canadian Pacific, which we'll come back to, is very significant, and Canadian National Railway were very good about actually cooperating with Amtrak and moving freight rail trains to the side and allowing Amtrak to come through. Some weren't, and Union Pacific is an example of a freight rail company that will not move over and allow Amtrak trains through. And that's just a company corporate culture kind of thing. Every company and every corporation has a culture, and some, as we can see, have a culture of cooperation, some don't, and they actively interfere with Amtrak. But another problem has arisen in the last few years. Freight rail trains have gotten longer, and it's led to accidents and other things. And allow me to explain. Used to be a freight rail train might be 25 cars long, which is pretty long in the old days. And it had a certain number of staff on board. You had an engineer, you had a conductor, even if it's freight rail, they have conductors who kind of oversee the operation of the train. You had a brakeman and you had some other things. So they worked on the train, kept it going. And as rail technology advanced, you didn't need brakemen as much. And then also the last few years, trains have gotten a lot longer, but they didn't increase the number of staff on board. So went to 50 trains. Now it's 100. Now, if you have a long stretch of single track that has a few little places in it where you can kind of move a train off to the side, you can get an Amtrak train in there, but you can no longer get a freight rail train in there. It won't fit. So, because of technical issues, it's now almost a requirement for Amtrak trains to have to move into that little niche to let the freight rail by. And it makes everything very inconvenient. It delays trips for Amtrak trains. Unfortunately, even though train corporations own the tracks, they're still very dependent on the government for funding to rebuild them or expand them. And we do need to go back and we need to upgrade all the signaling systems where you don't have grade separation, where trains and highways intersect or streets intersect. You need to have better signaling, and you need to start building longer stretches of double track. And that's a way you can improve Amtrak. Um, but the best situation, if you look at Amtrak being expensive and slow and infrequent, um, you compare it to Europe or Japan, China, Korea, anywhere that has high speed rail. High speed rail is much more frequent. It runs on time. It's extremely safe. The Shinkansen in Japan has never had a fatality due to an accident. And I think any injuries they may have had have been minor. And that was due to earthquakes. They really keep up with the Shinkansen and maintain everything, and the trains are thoroughly cleaned and taken off the tracks for a month and thoroughly inspected, and everything's updated, repaired. They just lavish a lot on it, but it works out. I mean, you save one life, there's no amount of money then that can justify killing someone. Of course, it's America and we don't feel that way, but um, contrast highways, over 30,000, 35,000 people a year die on highways. And people have lost their lives in airline accidents and ferries overturning. So, as you can see, very high speed rail is much more, uh, much safer. Uh, Rail of any kind also saves on CO2 emissions. When I took the Acela last year on the Northeast Corridor, I received an email from Amtrak saying I'd cut emissions 75% over driving and over 83% over flying. 75% over flying, 83% over driving, and we would have the same kind of results with a high-speed rail line. Also, trains are safer. You don't see many accidents with them, other than the freight rail companies not maintaining their tracks or not wanting. They also lobby against Congress spending a lot more money maintaining tracks. And of course, they don't put enough crew on the trains, so we've got to fix that. But if we had high speed rail, the way it would look, it'd be the same in Europe or Japan. We're talking about it here in Arkansas between NWA and Little Rock. It's 190 plus miles, say 195. It's a little long for driving. If you have a day trip you need to make to Little Rock, that's at least 7.5 hours on the road. The last time I went to Little Rock, there was an accident on I-40 that shut down all the lanes going one way. And that just added to my trip another 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And I was lucky. It could have been longer. So it's long for driving and it's kind of short for flights. Airlines really don't like these short hop routes. They don't make much money. The only thing it does is help build loyalty to name your brand airline, insert it here, But they don't make much money. In Europe, they're replacing short haul flights with high speed rail. So if basing it on, say, the high speed rail in Spain, if we were going to run between Little Rock and NWA, then you'd spend $30 to $60, depending on how much leg room you wanted. You could spend even more for a first class ticket, and you'd have a steward come and bring your meal to you, and you might get a couple of other amenities. And, you know, depending on the trip, if you're going to take your loved one on an anniversary trip, splurge a little, spend 150 bucks on a first class ticket. But anyway, it's going to take you about 2 hours to get from one place to the other. You're going from city center to city center. So you're in downtown Little Rock, or you wouldn't be in downtown NWA, but probably the main station would be in Fayetteville because it's the southernmost city in that the region we're in. And you can go and have a good time. There's wonderful places to eat. In Fayetteville, we have Theater Squared. We have the Walton Arts Center. There are events on the University of Arkansas campus you can attend that are so, there are football games and basketball games, all kinds of college sports. And so it's great. So anyway, that's the advantage. It would be faster. It'd be more frequent. If you're going to have high speed rail, given our population that we're serving, Little Rock has a little over 1 million people. In a few years, NWA will have 1.2 million plus. So, maybe every 2 hours have the train run. And keep in mind, once it runs and it's running really well here, and it doesn't have to take all that long to build it, most of the area of the construction for a high speed rail, and let's say it's 2 tracks running between, like I say, NWA and Little Rock, it's going to go through mostly empty land. Arkansas is very sparsely populated with a couple of exceptions. So, and I've mentioned those. In a few years, 70% of Arkansas's roughly 3 million people will live between NWA and Little Rock. So we'll have kind of a nice population of people we can serve. NWA, we have the world headquarters for 3 Fortune 500 companies. So there's a lot of economic density going on here also. And if it's more frequent and it's available, more people will use it. So that to me is the difference between high-speed rail, more convenient, faster, less expensive, and Amtrak. So with Amtrak, to improve that, we want more frequent service, and we need to really sit on the freight rail companies and say, you got to move over, and we need to get the states and the federal government to help upgrade tracks. That includes building longer sections of double track. And so the freight rail companies can't say, well, we have a 2-mile long train. It's 100 cars. We can't fit it. Oh, yeah, you can. You can move it over here and let the Amtrak train through. And the Amtrak trains can actually function as feeder trains for the high-speed trains. Now, if we're going to have a high-speed train from NWA to Little Rock, it's not going to stop there. We're going to go on to Memphis. We can have a high-speed train that runs from Little Rock down to Dallas. It'll run through places like Texarkana, Shreveport, Louisiana, and even Tyler, Texas, to get to Dallas. So once again, we're going to see some smaller communities and other metropolitan areas served by this train. It's fantastic. So that's mostly what I have for that. Now, in terms of cost, let's talk about that. One single track of railroad serves as many people as 10 lanes of freeway. So many major metropolitan areas where they put off building mass transit, you have 16 lanes of traffic. The 2-track railroad I'm proposing we build for high-speed rail would cover more than that. And so what that means is that it's expensive. It may be somewhat expensive to build, about $20 million a mile. But once it's built, you maintain it, and it is there. It is, you may not have to add any tracks. Now, around stations, you may need to have 3 or 4 tracks, split out for trains that are going to pass through and not stop at that station. But, it's ultimately, once it's built and you start using it, you stop thinking about how much it costs. And that's been the experience in other places around the world. The terms of real estate, our regional airport, the Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport, takes up as much space as 300 miles of double track railroad. And keep in mind, it's only about 190 plus, maybe a few extra miles here and there, because of where you're pulling into stations and so on. That will actually, so it's much cheaper in terms of real estate to build that double track from where I am in Northwest Arkansas to Little Rock. And then, continuing it on to Memphis, it's only another 130 miles. Going down to Dallas, it's 180 or so. Seems like along I-30, it's 180 miles between Dallas and Little Rock. So it really opens up a lot of travel possibilities, connects you to some major places. If you have a Amtrak that runs between Kansas City, Missouri, comes through NWA, goes down to Shreveport, and it serves a lot of smaller cities like West Fork, Arkansas. I already mentioned, West Fork would be a good example. It's about 5,000 people, but you have a loading platform, and they can just get on the Amtrak style train and come up to Fayetteville, get on the high speed train and keep on moving. So, I mean, that's the way you start connecting. It's also why we are really working here at NWA Go with local governments to develop mass transit. Because once people get to the station, they want to get somewhere. We have some really great bike and hike trails, which is fantastic. But we need 7-day-a-week bus service with more frequent routes and more frequent buses. And we're also looking at light rail, as I said. And so, you want to be able to have a central station that connects all of this. You get off the high-speed rail train or the Amtrak train, and you can get on a bus or, rent a electric motorbike, which we have, and ride up and down the trail on that, or a scooter. It really works out really well. So that's basically it. Connectivity is density. And if I guess Tony Studios is the only one here, I don't see who else. It doesn't show here how many people are watching like it would on YouTube. But if I have YouTube, there's an echo. So Tony, do you have any questions or anything? I will add that I was watching another train day celebration with the High Speed Rail Alliance, and they have a short video they made that kind of sums up a lot of things. What I've learned from filmmaking is that, sorry, I don't. Oh, that's fine. No, you don't have to. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad to see that the chat works. So anyway, they had a short video called Cross Rail Chicago. And when it's visual, you can just see it, and I don't have to go through all the long discussions or anything. That would cut down the amount on here. But I need someone who's a filmmaker of some type and who has the skills who can help me put together a short video like that. When it's released, I will put it up on our NWA Go platform on YouTube, and then I'll share it on the website and Facebook. So uh, that way it'll be something, a blurb we can show if we go make a presentation somewhere. Say, well, here's what we have in mind, and here you are. And it shows how local mass transit could connect to a high speed rail or an Amtrak style rail. And I need to mention also the Kansas City to Shreveport going through NWA Amtrak style train. We want 4 trips. Keep in mind, a trip is a complete north south or east west run. So technically, there'd be 8 trains coming through, but 4 going one way, 4 going the other. Uh, and when you have that kind of regional rail that operates with that frequency, it actually becomes uh, commuter rail for the area. Because then people that live in a place like I mentioned, West Fork, I know there are University of Arkansas professors who commute and go to Fayetteville to go to work at the university. Now they could just catch a train in the morning and go up to the university, catch one of the Razorback Transit buses, and go to uh, the university and do their work all day. And when they're ready, come back and then catch the evening train and go back to West Fork. You go to Winslow, and we could go through Mena, Arkansas, since we're going down to Shreveport. You go up through Aurora, Missouri. People living in not Montanay, Monet, Missouri, could live there and very easily catch a commuter regional train, use it as a commuter to go to work in Bentonville. You get off the train in Rogers and catch a bus up to the Walmart World headquarters. So really expands the possibility for real estate development. And that's why we would want to do that, one reason. And so we want to put that into a condensed video of about 5 minutes. Anyway, that's it for today. If you haven't already, when you watch this afterwards, please like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And I'm going to also I've been trying to enable the super chat option where if you're watching on YouTube, you can, contribute a little bit of money. You say, I like this video, and hit that. And I think it's kind of any amount of money. It could be $1 or $50. I don't expect huge amounts of money, but people want to contribute, $1 to $5. That's brilliant. We have some more expenses now, including this uh, Restream platform I'm going to be using. We're going to need to keep that up. So anyway, we've been on for about a half hour. Once again, thank you, Tony Studios, for showing up. I'm going to sign off now. And as soon as I figure it out how. And we will see you next time. Bye.